verse 1 and 2 of Hebrews. Okay. Hebrews 1 and 2, and then Hebrews 2, verse 3.
Long ago, at many times and in many ways, God spoke to our fathers by the prophets. But in these last days he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed the heir of all things, through whom also he created the world.
Okay, and then chapter 2, verse 3.
How shall we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? It was declared at first by the Lord, and it was attested to us by those who heard.
So what is he talking about there? Long ago, God did what? He spoke through the prophets. Today, he's doing what? He has spoken to us in his Son, or through his Son. To how much will we neglect if we neglect such a great salvation? It was declared by the Lord and attested to by the prophets. He's talking specifically about what God is saying through Jesus. Talking specifically about Jesus' teaching, Jesus' spoken instruction. You understand what I'm saying? Like he's saying, okay, we all know how great angels are, and the law given by angels was really, really important. And every commandment, had a just retribution. And every time the Israelites disobeyed, there was a just punishment that came. Very serious, very sobering. But today, God is speaking in his Son. And he's even more important than the angels. He's received a name greater than theirs. So his speaking in his Son is not just talking about Jesus, look how great Jesus is, but look how important Jesus' words are. You understand what I'm saying? Does anybody have any question or objection or thought or concern about what we've said so far? Greg, I thought I saw an eyebrow.
Are you sure it's his talking directly about what his words were, or do you think it's like maybe he spoke like the whole concept of him being like the suffering servant and being lowered and then exalted and like, because I don't think it necessarily has to be.
It would be like his example of righteousness.
Maybe
his being with us by the Spirit.
Because that's what right after that it says, spoke to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and then it goes through the whole. He's setting this whole thing up, and then what I think is like, oh, okay, so if Jesus suffered like that, then then I should no doubt I'm going to have to suffer.
True, he doesn't think that.
Then I think but I don't see. I didn't think so exactly what Jesus was saying.
Well, when you get to chapter 2, he starts talking about it. Whatever we're talking about,
by signs and wonders.
It was declared at first by the Lord.
Okay.
And it was attested to by those who heard. Well, God also bore witness by various miracles and gifts of the Holy Spirit distributing according to his will. What is the it? The it is the teaching of Jesus.
It says this salvation.
He says this salvation.
This salvation, which was first announced by the Lord, was confirmed to us by those who heard it. The salvation was confirmed by those who heard it. God also testified to it, the salvation, by signs, wonders, and various miracles.
And that's the question. What is it? What is the salvation? Is it justification by faith? Is it believe and be saved? Or is it the teaching and instruction of Jesus? And my point is that it's the teaching and instruction by Jesus, similar to the law was the teaching and instruction given by the angels. The point he's making is because of who it was given by Moses, but by God through the angels, through Moses, it was a very important thing and had serious retributions. But today, we're talking about Jesus and what God has spoken through him.
I think that's pretty clear.
And so and so when he says so great a salvation, we generally say so great a salvation. Oh, just the simple believe and be saved. But I don't think that's what he's getting at, because the salvation, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, doesn't always just refer to that, the word salvation.
It says here, the sentence starts out for if the message spoken by the angels. And then it's comparing that to the salvation, which would be like the gospel. And then it goes on to say the salvation which was first announced. So I think it's really talking about the message.
Right.
The
The word though in chapter or in verse 3 at the end where it says great salvation, it says the word is I don't know soter yeah. But it says it's rescue or deliverance. So I think that point is made by that it's not just this thing, it's like the rescue, the deliverance. I thought that made more sense.
Well, I think deliverance and
Um,
salvation kind of go hand in hand. I
Right.
think it's the message. Okay, well, that's
Well, I
that's
think
one
if
thing.
you do the comparison to what the consequences were for obeying the message that was spoken by the angels, the law, there was the consequence that you went through the list in Deuteronomy, and for the whole group, and then also you went through a list where in Numbers for the individual, and then so the consequences. What are the consequences for ignoring such a great salvation? That's
the
what
point.
we.
Is
That's
it
the question. We need to look at that to tell what that salvation is. Then
right,
we'll have
and
an
that's,
answer.
and that's the point that I'm wanting to get to. Is there is like we were talking about before, remember the first week, who's the audience for the book of Hebrews? Well, if it's just a general call to salvation to unbelievers, then the neglecting of it would be, okay, you're ignoring the message, you're rejecting the message, you're rejecting what Jesus is saying, and it's hell, perdition. But if it's a message addressed to believers, which the law wasn't given to the Egyptians, the law wasn't given to the Canaanites, the law was given to God's people after they were delivered. And he makes that point later on in Hebrews. You know, the ones who heard and the ones who suffered the consequences were all those delivered by Moses through the Red Sea. You know, and so the law was given to God's people. Who was Jesus addressing in his spoken ministry? Especially, I mean, there's various times, but when we were going through the Sermon on the Mount, if you remember, his disciples came to him. He opened his mouth and taught them, saying,
So those that follow Jesus.
the what it seems that the author of Hebrews is warning about is the neglecting and the drifting away from the teachings and the instructions of Jesus, the disobeying what Jesus is saying. And his point is that this has a consequence, and that's a point that's often, I think, neglected by Christians. You think, well, we know we gotta believe, we know we gotta get saved, and then after that, well, we should do righteous things. Why? Well, we just should. What happens if we don't? Nothing. We're saved, but we still should anyway.
I don't think most people say nothing, but
Well,
I think,
that's the the caricature I'm giving of a.
yeah, let's just take that as an exaggerated character. But
So it may not be what they believe if you ask them, but it's what they do, and it ends up looking like.
well, that's what I do pretty much.
I was gonna say, they meaning me.
So the. What were you saying?
No, I was just wondering where she got that.
Like before you said,
Yeah, please, I'm thirsty.
I can get you
Sorry.
some water too.
So anyway, how will we neglect if we neglect? How will we escape if we? And the we to me implies this. The author's including himself. And like we talked about the word drift before, like you drift away from something where you're at. You know, I'm here, but let us be careful. Lest through neglect we drift away from it. So his audience is of people listening to him who believe, who are in the same position that he is. He says, you know, those under the law had consequences if they disobeyed, if they disregarded the law. He says a number, someone was high-handed and sinning intentionally. They had consequences. So how will we neglect? How will we escape if we neglect? And so the message is, believers, this is what we have to understand. The consequences under law were severe, but there's also severe consequences for us. And as Jesus' position is even greater than the one who gave the law. Is that clear? Am I making a...
But that makes sense.
So basically, the audience of the book was disregarding what Jesus is teaching.
He's warning them against disregarding it. He's saying, like, there's a potential to disregard it. For his audience and himself, how shall we escape if we neglect? Not, you unbelievers, you need to come believe in him. No, he's saying, we believers need to be careful lest we neglect.
He does say we.
He says that a number of times.
So that makes it an important message for us believers.
That makes it an important message